And now for another episode of Random Reading Roulette. Canoes and Kayaks for the Backyard Builder. Page 43. The plywood from the sagging and the binding the cut. You could use a blade made for plywood, but I find that carbide teeth hold up longer. If you use a saber saw, make sure that the panel is well supported and held down against the cut. These saws are especially prone to tearing out grain, so you may want to make the cuts a little more oversized to compensate. If you have access to a big bandsaw, the cuts are easily made, but you will need a big enough throat size to make 24-inch cuts. The 2x8 foot sheets of plywood can go into overhead racks or slip under a bench. One good place to store them, or any other long rippings, might be right under the mold that you are working on. It's surprising how this spot can be so convenient and yet not underfoot. If you do not store materials under the mold, be careful of glue drips. Covering the stock with a layer or two of old newspaper will protect it quite well. Scantlings for plywood. Due to its cross-grained structure, a given thickness of plywood will be stronger than the same thickness of natural wood, whereas a half-inch or 3/8 inch is a normal thickness for cedar planks in the small craft. The equivalent plywood planking would either be a 1/4 inch in fir or lauan, or 4 millimeters in quality imported panel. Since plywood is heavier than the equivalent piece of natural wood, it is important to keep these sizes in mind, or your boat will be a real barge. Planking with plywood. Some people like plywood and some people hate it. Aside from plywood prejudice, the latter's dislike probably stems from two main sources. Plywood edges are 1/2 in grain and will absorb water quickly. This can lead to delamination, leading to rot and loss of structural integrity. Unless the edges are capped and sealed, sun delamination is probably inevitable, especially if the wood is subject to the increased stress of cycling through wet and dry, hot and cold that comes from being stored outside. This single factor has probably turned more people off to plywood than anything else. This is a valid objection, but it's worth noting that quality imported plywoods are much less susceptible to this type of failure, almost to the point of negligibility. Another drawback is the normal marine fir plywood does not finish very well. It tends to check in the sun and show raised grain, largely due to the slash grain fir used in the top veneers. Using a sealer before painting will help, but it is wiser to use a better quality plywood to begin with. Fiberglass. Fiberglass offers the builder some excellent properties. It is available in several configurations, including chop strain matte, woven roving, unwoven roving, and cloth. But I use cloth exclusively on these boats. The cloth itself comes in a variety of weights, which range from about 1 to 10 ounces per square yard. It comes in rolls up to 38 inches wide and in narrow tapes, which are particularly useful reinforcing and sealing seams. I order cloth by mail from Defender Industries, address in appendix, but is available from local wholesalers, retailers around the country, as well from mail order suppliers. This has been a reading from Canoes and Kayaks for the Backyard Builder by Skip Snaith at your local little library. Good night.